Good morning. I'm Rudy Michelson of Monsoon Communications. Welcome and thank you for joining the Dimerix's investor webinar following today's news of the Japan license deal. Now, let me point out, you can submit questions using the Q&A function and we'll get to them after the presentation. Dr. Nina Webster, CEO and Managing Director of Dimerix, is briefing us on today's news. I'll now hand over to Nina.
Thank you, Rudy, and good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. What a great start to 2025 for Dimerix. Thank you for joining me today, and particularly to those in Australia who are still on summer vacation. It's a pleasure to present the Dimerix news to you today. My name is Dr. Nina Webster, and I am the CEO and Managing Director of Dimerix. For those of you who are not familiar with Dimerix, we are an Australian publicly listed pharmaceutical company working to improve the lives of patients with inflammatory diseases, including both kidney and respiratory disease. Our lead clinical asset, DMX-200, also known as Kytovra in some territories, is currently in a phase 3 clinical trial as a treatment for Focal Segmental Glomerulosclerosis, or FSGS, which is a rare type of kidney disease on the back of some very promising data from our phase 2 clinical trial in 2020 and our phase 3 clinical trial interim analysis announced in March 2024. During this webinar, I will walk you through the licensing transaction announced today with our new partner, Fuso Pharmaceutical Industries Limited, as well as the Dimerix opportunity. As always, please note the presentation today does contain forward-looking statements that represent management's current views, and actual results may differ as a result of many factors, some of which are noted on this slide. For those of you less familiar with Dimerix, our lead clinical asset, DMX-200, is in phase 3 trials for a treatment for Focal Segmental Glomerulosclerosis, for which there are no approved treatments anywhere in the world, and for which we have orphan drug designation in US, Europe, and UK, as well as the potential for breakthrough designation in some territories, including Japan. Orphan disease means it's considered a rare disease. As such, global regulatory agencies provide incentives to develop products for these indications. These incentives include higher pricing, guaranteed market exclusivity periods upon approval, as well as other regulatory incentives. DMX-200 is what we consider a significantly de-risked late-stage development program in FSGS. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, Dimerix has good validation for the asset, both technically and commercially. Technical validation in that the phase 3 is typically the last study before submitting for marketing approval. And being in phase 3, that means that 1, we have already demonstrated a strong safety profile, and 2, we have collected encouraging efficacy data across both the phase 2 clinical trial as well as the first interim analysis in our current phase 3 clinical trial. We validated our asset commercially through 3 licensing agreements that collectively may bring in up to 458 million Australian dollars in upfront and potential milestone payments, plus royalties on sales. And secondly, we've already conducted commercial manufacturing scale-up activities. As a reminder as to what FSGS is, it essentially means some sections of the kidney filtering units are scarred. FSGS attacks the kidney filtering units, causing inflammation and irreversible scarring of the kidneys. Those scarred sections spread across the kidney over time until there are not enough cells left to effectively filter the blood, leading to kidney failure that requires dialysis or transplantation. To help put our phase 3 clinical program into perspective, I'd like to walk through the progression of FSGS kidney disease. First, patients with FSGS kidney disease typically present with high blood pressure. The kidney vessels work harder under this pressure, which causes inflammation. This ongoing and persistent inflammation causes sclerosis or scarring. As the cells become scarred, the cells die off, leading to kidney filtering units becoming leaky, and that allows protein to spill into the urine, which we know as proteinuria. This leads to kidney cell death, where unlike other cells in the body, kidney cells cannot regenerate. This is why kidney disease is progressive. Once it has gone down the hill, it cannot come back up. As a result, a negative cycle begins where there are now less kidney cells that have to work even harder, causing more inflammation, causing more scarring and cell death. This cycle progresses quickly and ultimately leads to kidney failure, where there are not enough cells to effectively filter the blood. Now, the current standard of care for FSGS is a blood pressure medication called an angiotensin receptor blocker, or an ARB, and this works to reduce pressure in the kidney vessels. Our drug, which is a small molecule oral capsule, works on the inflammatory pathway and aims to reduce inflammation and ultimately prevent scarring. Together, these two treatments create a synergistic benefit for the patient. And this helps you understand the design of our clinical trial, where all patients remain on the blood pressure medication throughout the study. FSGS is a disease that's diagnosed by biopsy, which is a surgical procedure. In the absence of any approved treatments available to patients who are diagnosed with FSGS, it is likely biopsy rates are low. For example, in Japan in 2023, only around 1,400 patients received any treatment specifically for FSGS. However, it is anticipated that the biopsy rates and the number of patients diagnosed with FSGS may increase as new therapies become available for physicians to treat their patients. This morning, we were absolutely delighted to announce the agreement with our new licensing partner, Fuso Pharmaceutical Industries Limited, for Japan. Fuso makes the ideal commercial partner for Dimerix, bringing a wealth of experience in development, sales, and marketing across Japan. Fuso is a Japanese pharmaceutical company listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange and headquartered in Osaka, Japan, whose purpose is to continue to produce medicines that support life and nurture the life yet to be born. Fuso is well established as a kidney dialysis specialty pharmaceutical company, having developed and launched more than 30 different dialysis solutions and promoting dialysis-related products for optimal dialysis treatment in renal clinics across Japan. As a pioneer and market leader in dialysis products, Fuso plans to continue to improve patients' lives by developing patient-friendly renal products. The licensing transaction announced today creates a strong strategic partner between the two companies. For us, we have access to Fuso's broad range of expertise and capabilities across Japan, including Fuso's existing relationship with renal clinics, not just for sales and marketing, but also for clinical trial recruitment, as Fuso will take responsibility for opening sites and recruiting patients in Japan. This really puts us in a far stronger position to work towards bringing our exciting drug candidate to those FSGS patients who currently have limited treatment options. As Fuso's president stated, together, Fuso and Dimerix will work quickly to deliver safe and effective new drugs to patients suffering from FSGS. We are absolutely thrilled to be partnering with Fuso for Japan. I'd like to take just a moment to thank the outstanding Fuso team, who've been an absolute delight to work with as we navigated and negotiated the complexities of the agreement. I also recognize the skills of the many translators who assisted in the complex and technical due diligence and negotiations held in Japanese and English. And of course, a big thank you to our amazing commercial team at Dimerix, who gave up so much of their personal time with me over the past several months and even over the Christmas period to get this transaction over the line. So now to the key elements of this regional licensing deal for DMX-200 in a single indication. In exchange for Fuso rights to commercialize DMX-200 for FSGS in Japan, Dimerix will receive up to 107 million Australian dollars in total across upfront and potential milestone payments. This comprises an upfront payment of 300 million Japanese yen, or approximately 3.1 million Australian dollars based on today's exchange rate, within 40 days of signing. The first development milestone of 400 million Japanese yen, or approximately 4.1 million Australian dollars based on today's exchange rate, upon first clinical site being initiated in Japan, which is currently anticipated in Q1 2025. Up to 3 billion Japanese yen, or approximately 30.6 million Australian dollars based on today's exchange rate, in further potential development milestones, and up to 6.8 billion Japanese yen, or approximately 69.4 million Australian dollars based on today's exchange rate, in potential sales milestones. In addition, and upon regulatory approval, Dimerix is eligible to receive between 15% and 20% royalties on net sales of DMX-200 in Japan. Importantly, Fuso will be responsible for all costs in Japan, including site identification, contracting and initiation, patient recruitment, site management, investigator costs, and any other study if required. This is expected to be a significant financial investment by Fuso in the development activities for Japan. Fuso will also be responsible for submission and maintenance of the regulatory dossier to the Japanese Pharmaceutical and Medical Device Agency, or PMDA, in Japan, as well as all sales and marketing activities in the territory. Dimerix will continue to fund and execute the global ACTION3 Phase 3 program for FSGS in patients outside of Japan. Importantly, Dimerix retains all rights to DMX-200 outside of the Fuso, Advance, and Tiber licensed territories, as well as all indications outside of FSGS. Towards the end of 2024, Dimerix and Fuso met with the PMDA, which is the Japanese regulatory agency, to discuss the potential to include Japan in ACTION3 Phase 3 clinical trial and the potential approval of DMX-200 in Japan if successful. We are delighted to report that the PMDA approved the ACTION3 Phase 3 clinical trial in Japan with no further prerequisite studies. The PMDA further confirmed that the ACTION3 endpoints were appropriate for marketing approval in Japan if successful, on the basis that approximately 20 Japanese patients be recruited into the study. Fuso, who has responsibility for clinical sites in Japan, has already begun identifying potential sites and is working with the Dimerix-appointed clinical research organization, IQVIA, to contract and initiate those sites accordingly. Fuso will be responsible for any breakthrough designation and fast-track designation applications that may also provide further exclusivity benefits in Japan. Today's announcement is the third licensing deal executed for DMX-200 in FSGS. The first licensing deal was announced in October 2023 with Advance Pharma for the European Economic Area, UK, Switzerland, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, under which Dimerix could receive up to 230 million Australian dollars across upfront and potential milestone payments, as well as royalties on net sales. The second licensing deal was announced in May 2024 with Tiber Rare for the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and Iraq, under which Dimerix could receive up to 120 million Australian dollars in total across upfront and potential milestone payments, as well as royalties starting at 30% on net sales. With the addition of Fuso today, Dimerix now has 3 high-quality partners across multiple territories, providing strong support for Dimerix in advancing and commercializing DMX-200 as a potential new treatment for FSGS. Collectively, across all 3 licenses, Dimerix may become eligible for up to 458 million Australian dollars in upfront and potential milestone payments, as well as royalties on net sales. Needless to say, Dimerix has received a significant amount of partnering interest from pharma companies across those available territories outside of the Fuso, Tiber, and Advance Pharma territories. Significant potential value remains across those available territories, and we continue to pursue and progress those licensing opportunities, including in the US and in mainland China. Pleasingly, we continue to make good progress on those discussions for those territories currently available, and we look forward to updating the market in due course. Note that we cannot provide timing on these negotiations. Due diligence and contract negotiation is complex, and no licensing negotiation is ever the same as another. As such, deals will get done when they get done and could be announced at any time. Dimerix has spent many years working diligently to bring together and commercialize this asset, and I would like to recognize all staff, both past and present, who have all contributed in some way to get us to where we are today. You should all take a moment to congratulate yourselves again on your contributions. So to our ACTION3 Phase 3 clinical trial. Many of you will have seen this slide many times. The Phase 3 study is a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study of the efficacy and safety of DMX-200 in patients with FSGS who are receiving a stable dose of a blood pressure medication called an angiotensin receptor blocker, or ARB. Whilst the full study will follow 286 patients across 2 years and ultimately measure eGFR, meaning kidney function, and proteinuria, there are 2 blinded interim analyses built in. In March 2024, we announced that the ACTION3 Phase 3 trial of DMX-200 in patients with FSGS was successful in the first planned interim analysis of the proteinuria efficacy endpoint from the trial's first 72 patients. Using a statistical model, the analysis indicated that DMX-200 was performing better than placebo in terms of reducing proteinuria which is a surrogate marker of kidney disease progression. Passing this first interim analysis in the company's phase 3 trial was important, as it suggests that it is possible DMX-200 may achieve a statistically significant and clinically meaningful result at the end of the study. As such, the result is very encouraging, especially for those FSGS patients who currently have very limited treatment options. This analysis, this analysis was also significant for Dimerix, and we believe it added tremendous value to the DMX-200 opportunity, as it was based on a much larger cohort than the prior Dimerix phase 2 clinical trial in FSGS. As of today, and as announced last week, we have randomized and dosed 144 patients into the trial. With the second analysis intended after the first 144 patients reach week 35, this data collection is now expected in August 2025. The potential for accelerated or conditional approval submissions following the second interim analysis and any required unblinding will be assessed based on recommendations of the Independent Data Monitoring Committee and discussions with the appropriate regulatory authorities, such as the FDA in the US and the EMA in Europe. Our clinical trial is now able to recruit across 20 different countries, driven on a daily basis by our ever-diligent and superhuman clinical team. Whilst we have had to, sometimes painfully, navigate our way across all 20 regulatory agencies, the upside is that we have successfully engaged with 20 regulatory agencies who all support the ACTION3 clinical trial design for FSGS. Based on current recruitment rates and the opening of these additional clinical sites, we anticipate full recruitment of the 286 patients for the 2-year ACTION3 endpoint in Q3 2025. Touching on our current funding position, at the end of the September 2024 quarter, we had a cash position of $19.2 million. Since then, Dimerix has received $7.9 million cash as an R&D tax incentive rebate for the 2024 financial year. As a result of the license agreement announced today, we will receive approximately $3.1 million in upfront payment from Fuso within the next 40 days. We have also disclosed the first milestone payment of approximately $4.1 million following the first clinical site initiation in Japan, which is currently anticipated in the first quarter of 2025. Further sources of cash are anticipated from the exercise of options expiring in June 2025, which could total up to $6.5 million if all converted, future R&D tax incentive rebates, and any future potential licensing fees. So as you can see, this means we remain in a strong cash position to continue to fund our DMX-200 phase 3 development program. It really is worth reminding ourselves that we are all invested in a company which is at the forefront of delivering a potential new treatment for this rare type of kidney disease. At this time, there are no drugs specifically approved for FSGS anywhere in the world, so patients with FSGS today face poor outcomes with limited medical options. If successful, our drug candidate could make a huge difference globally to patients with this progressive and serious illness. And given we have orphan drug designation status, a potential fast track to commercialization is available, highlighting the compelling nature of this trial for the company. As you can imagine, it's an extremely busy within Dimerix at the moment, and I am genuinely excited about what 2025 may bring for the company. I am very much looking forward to providing updates to the market in due course. Thank you very much for your time, and I would now like to invite questions.
Thank you, Nina. We'll now move on to the Q&A. If you have any questions, you can continue to submit them using the Q&A function. We did have a pre-submitted question about other licensing deals, and that has been answered in the presentation. We have a question here from a shareholder who says that he's looked at the share register and it appears that the directors and board don't hold many shares in the company. Could you comment on that, Nina?
So the board and management do have shares in the company, but also a number of options. And as a result of that, when the company wins is when the management and or board would win as well. So there's certainly the incentive there to deliver on share price for the management and the board, as well as the investors into the business. I'd also like to note that when we're running this company, we are predominantly behind a confidential wall. and we cannot disclose certain information to market until it is complete. And during those periods, we are generally in trading blackout, which means we are really limited on when we can buy and or sell stock.
Okay. Another question, how long does it typically take to file and obtain accelerated approval, assuming the results warrant such approval?
That's a really interesting question because it depends on the territory. Every territory has a slightly different regulatory process for submission as well as the review period. In the US, for example, the submission from data to submission is how fast can you write a dossier. The average is 6 months, but generally speaking, you can get that down to around 3 to 4 months. And a review period for an accelerated approval is usually around 6 months.
Are there any other treatments in development that would compete?
So that's a double-edged question because there are other products in development for FSGS. However, they all use a very different mechanism of action. None are as advanced as DMX-200 in clinical trial at the moment. The next closest to us is a candidate that's targeting a very specific type of genetic FSGS, has just started a phase 3, but that really, when you look at a global population, only targets around a few % of the total market that we are targeting, so does not compete with us.
I've got a congratulations, Nina and the team. All the best. Congratulations. Do you see a path to market in Japan faster than other geographies?
Not necessarily. It depends, and the reason I say that is we have to have the patients from Japan into this trial, and that will only start now. So we do have 144 patients recruited into the study, but not from Japan. So the Japan timing will be very much driven by recruitment of the Japanese patients.
We have no further questions, Nina.
Thank you again to everybody for your time today, and thank you, Rudy, for hosting. I hope you're all as delighted as we are in today's news, and I'm genuinely excited about what 2025 might bring for Dimerix as we progress the ACTION3 Phase 3 clinical trial, as well as diligently negotiate partnering agreements in those other territories still available for licensing. We appreciate all our shareholders' support and your patience. We look forward to updating the market as we progress our development program and partnering activities. That concludes today's call. Happy New Year to you all, and may 2025 bring you everything you wish for.